Have you ever found yourself in an argument and found that you were struggling to explain why you believed what you believed? Or you found that what made clear sense in your mind, you were struggling to communicate clearly to the person you disagreed with? Today, we're going to take a look at the different types of persuasive speech topics and the strategies that we can use to more clearly articulate why we believe what we believe and what we want our audience to do with that information. Now, before we dive into these topics and strategies, you need to answer this question. What's your goal? What purpose do you have? Your answer to that question will help you know what type of topic and therefore what type of strategy you want to use to communicate your beliefs or values or ideas. So let's dive in. The first type of persuasive speech topic is the fact speech. A persuasive speech of fact is based around the general purpose of, I want my audience to accept my prediction. In other words, based off of observable facts, I predict X. That is the general formula that you might use in constructing your persuasive speech of fact. Now, in order to be most effective at your purpose, the strategy that you want to use is a topical organizational strategy. In other words, your main points in a persuasive speech of fact should be the facts that you are building your prediction around. Now, a persuasive speech of fact can be a little tricky. As we know, predictions are not foolproof. And oftentimes the facts that I use to make my prediction could be viewed from the opposition in a way that supports their prediction. So you need to be very careful when choosing the main points, the facts that you're choosing to build your argument around. They should be solid. You should have great research to support why your facts should be interpreted in the way that leads to your prediction. Otherwise, your opposition is going to be able to clearly state, this fact that my opponent has used could actually be interpreted this other way. So be careful when constructing a persuasive speech of fact that you can clearly articulate the credibility of the facts that you are choosing to build your argument around and why they should be interpreted in such a way that leads to your prediction. So that's our first type of persuasive speech topic. Our second type of persuasive speech topic is a persuasive speech of value. In a persuasive speech of value, your purpose is for your audience to accept your evaluation of something. The general form or template that this type of persuasive argument takes is that blank is, and then you would use a God or a devil term. Now, a God and a devil term would be things like good and bad or right and wrong. In other words, something's good, something's bad, right? But these are very context specific. For example, the Constitution would be a really important document in almost every country. So something being constitutional would be a God term, and vice versa. Something being unconstitutional would be a devil term. Something being healthy or unhealthy, safe or unsafe. These are some other examples of God and devil terms that aren't tied as explicitly to right and wrong, but are tied to this idea of you are evaluating, you are judging something, and you are saying it is either God term or devil term. So let's take a look at the type of strategy that we would use to best persuade our audience of our evaluation. We're going to use a two-part strategy. A two-part strategy has two main points. Let's use this example of a persuasive speech of value as our topic to take a look at this strategy. I'm going to have my topic be that plea bargains are unconstitutional. That's my persuasive speech. I want my audience to accept my evaluation of plea bargains as unconstitutional. So what I need to do in my two-part strategy, I'm going to have two main points. My first main point is to set the standard. What does the Constitution have to say about the right to a fair trial? That's what I'm going to say in my first main point. Here are all of the things that the Constitution says you must have in order for you to have a fair trial. That's my first main point. I set the standard. This is a really important step in a persuasive speech of value. If your audience doesn't agree on the standard, they're going to disagree on your claim. But if they agree to your standard, when you use that to measure your topic in your second main point, they will either have to say that they aren't following the standard that they agreed to, or they're going to have to change their evaluation. So, first main point, we set the standard. We don't talk about plea bargains. We don't talk about our topic. We're talking about the standard. So we're talking about things like if our topic has to do with healthiness or safety, we're going to define and set the standard for healthiness and safety. But for our example, remember, we're using plea bargains are unconstitutional. So I set the standard of what the Constitution says about the right to a fair trial. In my second main point, I measure my topic against the standard. So if I laid out 3 things that the Constitution says you must have in order to have a fair trial, in my second main point, I'm going to take those same 3 things and I'm going to explain how plea bargains do not meet that standard. That is the most effective way at communicating your evaluation of your topic and having it communicated in such a way that your audience either must agree that they do not follow the standard they have agreed to, or they must accept your topic. The last type of persuasive speech is a persuasive speech of policy. This is probably the one that people most commonly attribute to this idea of persuasion, because it's wanting your audience to take some action. The first 2 types of persuasive speeches that we have looked at are not about action. They're about accepting a prediction or accepting an evaluation. Both are acceptable, but this is probably the one we think about most commonly when we think about a persuasive speech, wanting some action from our audience. So if that's the purpose that you have for your audience, you are going to use a persuasive speech of policy. The basic formula for a persuasive speech of policy is my audience should or you should blank. So when you are wanting some action, you are setting up the expectation with a word like should or must or need to, and then what that action is. Now, there are various types of strategies that you could use to be most effective at this type of persuasive speech. So let's take a look at what those are, and your purpose is going to come into bear when choosing the persuasive speech strategy for a persuasive speech of policy, okay? So let's take a look. The first 2 types of persuasive speech strategies that we have for a persuasive speech of policy are problem solution and problem cause solution. Now, a problem solution strategy has 2 main points. Problem cause solution has 3 main points. Problem solution sets up what the problem is and what the solution is to that problem. Problem cause solution sets up what's the problem, what's the cause, and what's the solution to the cause. So when you want your audience to take action on the problem, you use problem solution. When you want your audience to take action on the cause, you use problem cause solution. Let's take a look at this through an example. A very common persuasive speech topic that I hear is on the Pacific garbage patch, this great island of floating garbage in the Pacific Ocean. A problem solution speech would say, There's a problem because there's a garbage patch in the ocean. The solution is to clean up the garbage. A problem cause solution would say there's a problem because there's a garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. The cause is there's lack of enforcement of regulation on dumping on shipping vessels that use the Pacific Ocean. So the solution in a problem cause solution speech is to have better enforcement of regulations on shipping vessels. Notice the difference here? What do you want your audience to take action on? Do you want them to go clean up the ocean? Or do you want them to enforce regulation? Remember, in a persuasive speech of policy, you are giving this speech to a specific audience. So, what can your audience do? Using the same example, do you expect your audience to go and actually pick up garbage out of the ocean? Is that the action you want them to take? They might not be able to. Do you want them to go enforce regulation? Well, how are they going to enforce regulation? Make sure that you set up a reasonable action that your audience could take. So maybe it's to support organizations that are cleaning up the garbage patch. Or maybe it's to call their congressional representative and advocate for reform on the enforcement of legislation. Make sure that your audience can take the action you are proposing. So that's problem solution and problem cause solution. The third type of strategy that we have for a persuasive speech of policy is called Monroe's motivated sequence. Now, I'm not going to go into too much depth here because there are some really great videos that I'll link in the description. But the basic purpose of the motivated sequence is to make your audience aware of a need that they have and how your action could fill that need. We often see this in sales pitches, making your audience aware of a need that they have in their life, and then helping them see how your product that you are selling could meet that need. That's the motivated sequence. If you're trying to sell something to your audience, I highly encourage you to use the motivated sequence. We've got two more. The comparative advantage strategy has the purpose of showing your audience the variety of actions that are available to them. We often see this when we know our audience is already favorable toward the action we want them to take. If you're speaking to a group of people at a seminar that is about losing weight, you have an idea that if they chose to come to that seminar, they probably already want to take action, but they might not know where to start. So a comparative advantage strategy shows your audience just how many different options they have in taking the action. And it's usually showing here are the best couple of options that you have to move towards this action. The sort of opposite of the comparative advantage is called the refutational approach. The refutational approach is about refuting your opposition's claims about your action. So you can think of this when you know your audience disagrees with you or is unfriendly toward your action. Refute their claims that they have about that action that you want your audience to take. Here, your purpose is to get them to start thinking differently about the action you want them to take. So, the question that you have to ask yourself when determining the strategy and the topic for your persuasive speech, what is your purpose? When you can answer that question of what do you want your audience to believe, value, or do, you'll have an easier time having a cohesive flow, articulating your claim, and staying cool under pressure. So, what's your purpose?